Hello. I was watching one of Owen's latest videos, a piece of it rather, and he was going on about he doesn't know what the moon is, and the point is it doesn't matter, just live in the real. And I quite disagree with Owen that I don't know what the moon is, and I do think it's a planet and whatever, but that's not really the point of this video. I know the moon's a planet because I looked at it through a telescope when I was a little kid, and it's got mountains on it and it moves. So, um, you know, my uncle gave me a telescope when I was a kid because I was interested in astronomy, and I'm fairly sure that I knew that the moon is a solid object and a sphere. But that aside, he's right about living in the real. I mean, I had to go to this meeting, and I was on a train, and I was looking at all the people sitting in the train, and the thought occurred to me, like, what each of these people are like. What do they really think? What's their belief system on X? Like, what do they think about whether it's Brexit, race, IQ, nationality, how they feel about their loved ones, how they feel about their relatives, which maybe they don't love. Who do they think is an enemy? Who do they think is a friend? That sort of thing. And the fact is that everybody is living in mostly illusion. And this might not be immediately apparent to some of you, but a friend of mine was saying, I don't believe in hypnosis. Well, it doesn't matter. Hypnosis believes in you. It's like everything everything you think it's not, most of it is not stuff that you've figured out. Most of it is not stuff that you've experienced. It's stuff that you've been told. It's basically an idea that's being passed on through generations. And most of the ideas that you've been told are not true. They're lies. I believed for a very long time, that the Dark Ages were indeed Dark Ages. They weren't. Vox has got a recent blog about it on his he's got a post on it on his blog, and it's just sort of, what you think happened in the First World War, in the Second World War, what you think happened in anything that you pretty much weren't standing there watching it happen in front of your eyes, most likely happened in a different way than you think. So it's the thing is, to realize that is difficult, but you can do it if you start with like the basics. If you start with like, well, what's important? You get up in the morning, go to work, whatever. Let's say the average person gets up, maybe has breakfast, and they go to work. They spend 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day at work. Maybe they have lunch, they speak to their colleagues, they come home. But in their head, they're worrying about whether it's Brexit, whether it's the civil war that's coming to America, whether it's the coming financial collapse, which has to happen, whatever. But the reality is, what's your day-to-day life like, and what are the average thoughts that you have in your head? And there's a huge gap. The average thoughts you have in your head have got very little to do with your day-to-day reality most of the time. The things that you worry about, the things that you concentrate on, unless you're in a dire situation where you're being forced to face reality. Most of the times your worries, your fears and so on never materialize, and most of them happen, if bad things that happen generally tend to be a bit of a surprise or come at you sideways, and there's not a lot you can do about it. So The reason I'm mentioning this is because the importance of living in the real was very brutally evident to me from a very young age, and especially when I came to Europe. I was about 16 when I started to study in England, but I grew up in Africa mostly, and Africa is good for that because it's like martial arts. You know, you can talk as much as you want, you can pretend as much as you want, you can delude yourself as much as you want, but when somebody punches you in the face, if you don't block or get out the way, it's gonna hurt. Somebody's kicking you in the balls, you either move, block, get out the way, or feel pain. And Africa's pretty much like that. The reality is brutal, in your face, often comes with very little warning, and that's just how it is. And it's a very good way to ground you, to put you in reality. In the so-called civilized countries, people worry about whether their socks match their shoes and whether their shoes match their tie and whether they've got the latest fancy pants. Absolute. It was mystifying to me when I first came to Europe, especially in Italy, in places like Milan or whatever, where just walking down the street, people would look at you and see what you're wearing and try and judge you on that. And it was like, at first, it was just so odd to me. I had no idea what was going on. I'd go to a party or whatever, and I'd just be in jeans and a t-shirt, kind of like I am now, whatever. And people would look, and it's sort of like, they'd sort of initially sort of be a bit standoffish because, oh, well, he's obviously a peasant, he's like the redneck of the situation. But I was so oblivious to this stuff that, just myself. So I'd talk to anybody and I'd say hi and whatever. And pretty soon, everybody at that place, they couldn't help themselves. They'd realize, this guy, what's he got? How come he comes here in jeans and a t-shirt and just normal trainers? And he just talks to everybody, doesn't give a shit. He's like, he's like cool. And like the women would tend to get interested, and the men as well, and it would just be like, and they'd come and ask me and say, well, what do you do? Are you like in movies? Are you like a famous person? I'm like, no, dude, I do as little as possible, because at that time I wasn't even working. I was like studying and stuff. Like, not really, no. I just, but and eventually would come out, like, oh, but you're so confident and whatever. And it's like, I wasn't even trying to be confident or anything. It was just like, I'm just being myself. It's like, I am what I am. I don't care if you like it, don't like it, whatever. And for the average Westerner raised in a so-called civilized country, that is such a rude shock, though, that it has kind of a magnetic effect on them, either positive or negative, right? Because it can go either way. And it's... but it's something that I always thought was quite missing from Western civilization. So, I've had quite a few emails and comments and so on from like young guys when I did the How to Get a Good Wife video. So this is kind of related, because you're going to struggle in life if you don't face reality at every turn, at every opportunity, as quickly and as efficiently as you can every time it comes up. You can procrastinate, delude, dodge, and as you keep doing that, and that becomes your go-to response, you're going to avoid everything and waste your life. Literally waste your life away. You will not have achieved anything because you will have avoided all the tough things, all the responsibilities, all the interesting choices, all the the things where you have to take action, where you have to take responsibility. You will have dodged all of that. And you can, in Western civilization, probably not for very much longer, but a lot of people did and still do. When the crunch comes, whatever that crunch is, whether it's economic, whether it's personal, whether it's global, who knows? I mean, here's the thing. In 2020, the 4 magnetic phases of the sun are all going to go offline, sort of thing. The last time we had a giant ice age, 2 of them went offline, or discombobulated, let's say. Now all 4 are going to be doing that. but they're talking to us about, you know, climate change and the global warming. Yeah, just wait. Now, if that happens, there's another very interesting piece of information. I've been, you know, 24 years ago, when I wrote The Face on Mars, I was very aware and I tracked the movement of the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, because it moved over the last 100 years or so. It's moved by over, like, I think, if I remember correctly from memory, I might be wrong, but if I remember from memory, at the time I wrote the book 24 years ago, it had moved over 900 miles. And we know that the Earth has switched poles many times, but we don't know exactly when it happens. We know it happens once in a while, and it's usually a long while, thousands of years in between, but nobody really knows exactly when. And also, no one knows exactly how. Now, there is a theory which was sensationalized in one of the films, I think it's called The Day After Tomorrow, if I remember right, where the poles switch all of a sudden and things get frozen instantly. Now, there's good reason for thinking that, because they have found full-grown adult mammoths frozen with still food in their mouth and little flowers frozen in their mouth, which means they got killed or they died suddenly and were completely preserved, frozen. And stayed frozen until the tundra melted enough that they were found. So something froze these things really quick. And a pole switch potentially could be that. Now, if the four phases of the sun go offline or become disjointed to the point where it's going to affect our weather so severely, and we know the sun affects our weather more than anything else, who's to say that the magnetic fields of the sun going out of phase doesn't create a sudden pole switch on Earth? Now, if that happens, you're going to have massive earthquakes, massive tsunamis, huge changes, catastrophic changes of weather, and who knows where goes what, because Antarctica at one point used to have trees and forests on it, and now it's it's covered in ice. So something happened, something shifted. Now, if that happens, all your nice theories about the economy and whether your shoes match your tie, the fact that you have ties or suits, is going to be completely irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. And you don't even have to go to that extreme. I mean, you could just be in a country that all of a sudden finds itself at war. Now, admittedly, generally there is some kind of warning for this sort of thing. But, say some crazy bastard sets off a dirty bomb in, central London, and then as a result, there is an instant response, and before you know it, within a week, you've got a war going on in the streets where you live. No one can really prepare for that sort of thing very well, unless you're, prepping. You've got your little bunker somewhere in the mountains and an escape route. But keep this in mind, because life throws stuff at you, and the best way you can be prepared is by being able to face reality bluntly, straight up. So that's just a little piece of advice. It's a short little thing, but it's important. I don't know that I'm getting the point across very well, but just think what it would be like to live in the forest, where you had to forage for food or plant it and wait for it to grow and look at the seasons. Imagine you had to do that. You would have to think about everything that you're doing, and you'd have to deal with the elements and with the unforeseen, and maybe with other people that want to take what you have. Start to think in those terms. Not in the sense of being paranoid, right? Don't get despondent, don't get disheartened. That's a cardinal sin. To give up is the cardinal sin. It's just wrong. It's wrong on every level, spiritually, emotionally, physically. It's wrong. Giving up and quitting is just wrong. Find another way, change tactic, or push through. Do what you need to do. But you're gonna have plenty of time to rest when you're dead. So while you're alive, keep pushing. Yeah. that's really all I wanted to say for tonight. Like I said, I've got like some family around and stuff, so it'll probably be on Sunday or so before I make another video. But let me know if you got questions and stuff. Share the videos. It's going pretty well. I think we're hitting about 200 subscribers very soon, and from there it's just gonna keep climbing. I've been told that Vox mentioned having some of my videos on unauthorized, which we had talked about it a while back. So we'll see how that goes. That'll be interesting, because I have started to create a little series for him, which I haven't put up on YouTube because it was going to be exclusive for unauthorized. But he's very busy. I'm very busy, so we'll see how and when that happens. But I'm sure it will at some point. And the other little announcement is that I hope that this Sunday I will have finished off a book which addresses a lot of the questions that I've had, and addresses in a bit more depth stuff about the Catholic Church, the fact that the Novus Ordo Church is not the Catholic Church, that Bergoglio is not any kind of Christian, that his clerics are not Catholic, they're invalid clerics, they're not clerics of anything Christian at all. That sort of thing. Covers a bunch of other stuff, and maybe if I feel up to it on Sunday, I might do a Protestant flame wars. I've been pretty direct about the Catholics, but I don't want to leave anybody out. I want to offend everyone. I mean, there might be some people I haven't offended yet, so if you're one of them, just leave me a note and I'll get to you as well. Because I think I was going to do a little bit about Protestantism in general, just as a... And I know it'll get a little reaction emotionally, but the thing is, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in finding a couple of Protestants that actually have a brain, that are able to argue logically, that are able to concede logical points when they're correct. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. I met a guy many years ago, who was actually a Jehovah's Witness, which, they're a cult. But this guy, being a Jehovah's Witness, because of his approach, and because I believe he was a genuine Christian, I do believe that. Despite the fact that he was a Jehovah's Witness, I think his attitude, his behavior, the way he worked, the way he did things was very honest, forthright. And he actually got me to read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which, a lot of people are huge fans of C.S. Lewis, and don't get me wrong, the guy's body of work is amazing, but not my cup of tea. It's very English, and he comes very close to the point and he skirts around it. My guy is like Chesterton. Chesterton doesn't avoid any points. In fact, before you even know there's a point, he bangs you with a hammer on the forehead, and then he tells you, and that's why it's completely different, and that's why getting hammered in the head is good for you. Because Chesterton will write some absurd thing that you just think he's got to be absolutely nuts, crazy, and wrong. And 3 sentences later, you're like, oh my God, he's right. He's brilliant. I like Chesterton. It's the difference, I suppose, between an English polite sort of humor or insult, and a crude but very effective joke or again insult. It's I like Chesterton. I strongly suggest everybody read some Chesterton. He's funny as well. Of course, people don't have the patience now to read properly, but if you're a reader, pick up pretty much anything by Chesterton. It's really good and funny. Okay, that's it, and might see you on Sunday. Good night.